Hello everybody, it's Kirsty. You know me, I solve crimes or try and solve crimes using astrology, or what I call criminal astrology or forensic astrology. Today we're going to be having a look at this beautiful missing lady, Madison Bell. Now Madison is only 18 years old. She disappeared on Sunday the 17th of May this year after leaving her home to go and get a tan. Her car was found at a nearby church and she hasn't been seen since. Now Maddie has a tattoo of a cross on her neck and a ghost tattoo on her side, and she wears grey contact lenses. Here are the details for the sheriff's office if you have seen her or know of anything. If you have, please contact them with any information. Her family is desperately looking for her, so I figured I will just have a look at the chart for 9:45 and 10 a.m. and see if we can get any clues into the whereabouts of Maddie. Now she has a boyfriend, but her boyfriend was actually at home when she left. Now she left to go and get a tan and she didn't arrive at the tanning salon. They actually found her car abandoned in a church parking lot nearby with the keys inside and the phone inside. Now this car has been seen and is apparently could be in connection with Maddie and what happened to Maddie. So if anybody has seen this car and was in the area, I'm going to pull up a map as well. So apparently this man is wanted to be spoken to. Not a suspect. The police haven't said that he's a suspect, so if anybody knows who this gentleman is, apparently he just may know something, so hopefully he will come forward. So this white car and this gentleman here need, if anybody knows them, please call the number. I'll put it in the description. Again, let's bring up these charts. So we have 9:45 on this one and 10 a.m. on this one, because we know she left the house and drove there. So as you can see, we have no planets down the bottom in either of them. Everything is up the top. That's interesting to me, and it shows me quite clearly north. And I say north because Aries is up here, north of where she was. So that's the first clue. We'll move on and have a look at these separately and then have a look at the map as well. I've got 9:45 and I need to look at it. It's not very different than 10 a.m. But let's just have a look at the little subtle differences and see if that helps us. Now, firstly, in this early-ish stage of the case, it's not my place to say that this girl is deceased. I'm not going to go there. Let's follow this chart and see if we can see where she is. That's the whole point of this. So, firstly, the first thing I note is that the moon is at 0 degrees of Aries, which is a very critical point and a pivotal point, but I'm happy that it's not 29 degrees of Aries or a fire sign or any sign, in fact. So 0 is a nice little, just a nice little sign to see immediately. I'll zoom in. We need to look at the angles here. 16 degrees Cancer. That's this area. That represents Maddie. So that means Maddie is ruled by the moon, because the moon is the natural ruler of the zodiac sign of Cancer. The moon is also always the co-ruler of a missing person. So this moon is absolutely pivotal I believe, in finding Maddie. Okay, so the suspect, or a person of interest, if there is one, is Capricorn, is ruled by Saturn. So Capricorn at 16 degrees, there's Saturn there in the 7th house of the perpetrator. Now, what this tells me is that where she was going to, this person was already likely there. If there was a person there, it was the person was already likely at this location. Now, what I find interesting is Jupiter here is right next door to Saturn, and Jupiter represents churches. Her car was found in a church. So now we need to look, because a vehicle is ruled by Mars, because Mars is metal and a car is made of metal. Mars is in the 9th house, which is also churches. That's Jupiter's natural house. So there we're seeing very distinctly the car is going to the church. So in my mind, that means that she's actually, it feels like she's actually driven to the church. So no stops in between, and perhaps not even stopping at the salon place at all, but going straight to the church car park. Now, what I want to do is quickly have a look at the 10 o'clock one, and let's see what's different in that area. So Saturn is the ruler here, and that's at 1 degree of Aquarius. It's retrograde. In fact, all of these planets are retrograde: Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto in the 7th house. So that's something to keep in mind as well. When retrograde, especially a big retrograde stellium like this, is occurring, quite often when the retrograde stops and the planets go direct, you get information. So it can be helpful if the worst happens and a person disappears. It's more helpful astrologically if they've disappeared and there's strong retrograde. 10 a.m. It's the time that we've known that was the last time that she was seen, definitely. So 10 a.m. is the best chart to use, but I wanted to look at 9:45 because it shows us just a couple of little things. So here we have the ascendant is at 20 degrees now. It's moved 4 degrees, as well as the descendant, 20 Capricorn. Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto are still in the 7th house, but the car, the vehicle, Mars, has now moved into the 8th house, and the moon, which represents Maddie, has moved into the 9th house, where before it was on the other side in the 10th house. So the only movement differences are Maddie and the vehicle at 10 o'clock. Okay, so what does this mean? When something is in the 8th house, it's not good. But being that Mars is just the vehicle, the 8th house is the 8th house of death. But the vehicle was left there and has shown that there is cause for concern. So I'm not overly surprised at seeing the vehicle in the 8th house. Now, Mercury represents the drive itself. Okay? Now, Mercury is in Gemini, and it is at 11 degrees in the 11th house of friends. And just looking at some aspects, it's down here. It's really not making any important or pivotal aspects to anything, actually. So the vehicle, the travel there, the only aspects it makes is towards this 9th house and towards this 7th house. So it sort of implies to me again that the drive was directly to the church. And now that the moon is in the 9th house of the church, that again is showing me that at 10 o'clock she's driven directly to the church. Now where do we look? We'll look at the 3rd house cusp, because the 3rd house is movement and travel as well. So the 3rd house cusp is here, and that is ruled by Virgo, which is this sign here. So the 3rd house cusp line is in Virgo, and the natural ruler of Virgo is Mercury. So it's showing us quite distinctly that the drive was directly to the church. That's what I'm seeing here. Okay, so where do we look when we want to see where a person has gone? So we have a map, and we know that somebody saw her going apparently in a westerly direction in that vehicle that I showed you. Now, west on an astrology chart is here. So it's interesting that west was mentioned, because that's where we're going to be plotting lines, is towards the west. But then what I noticed, and what I said before, the moon being so important and being at 0 Aries also shows that north is also important. So I am already thinking she's gone west, then north. So we're going to have a look at that in a minute. But now I just want to have a look at if there is in fact a perpetrator or suspect, what does he look like, and some traits that we could put out there in case it triggers memories from the family or her boyfriend about who this is. When we want to see the physical appearance of a person of interest, we look, as always, to this line, the descendant, the 7th house, so Capricorn. Capricorn describes the perpetrator. Now, because we have Saturn here as well, we can use that to help with different features. And because we have Jupiter and Pluto in there, that can also give us a bit of an indication as well. It can flesh out a description a little better. So before we do that, let's see if there is an aspect between the 2 rulers which shows us that they possibly knew each other. So the moon, as we know here, is MADDIE, and Saturn here is a perpetrator. Saturn is at 1 degree, the moon is at 0 degrees, so that tells me straight away that there is definitely an aspect between them. And what that is so 0 to 0 is 30 degrees, and that to 1 is 31, so that's 61 degrees apart, which is a sextile. So if we went down to here, we would see the moon and Saturn there in sextile with the number 2 there. That's 2 degree orb. So 155 and 012 is giving us an aspect. This is telling me that she actually knows who this person is. Because it's a sextile, it's not as though it's a square or an opposition or a conjunction where she knows him really well, but I am pretty confident in saying that she knows who he is, because those 2 planets, those 2 rulers of here, are in aspect to each other very closely there. So it's almost like there's 2 degrees of separation between them. A friend's friend, a friend's uncle, a friend's father. We'll get into that. But that's the type of thing we're looking at. Okay, Capricorn on the descendant. That gives usually a fairly slender person. The face can be lean and thin or square. There's two face types with Capricorn: lean and thin or square. Blackish or dark thick hair. You may notice that this person has a disproportioned body of some sort. Noticeable teeth or crooked teeth or something to do with his or her teeth, and usually has a rugged appearance with a short beard or stubble. Now, I can't say that that person in the picture doesn't look Saturnian. He actually does. Now, his hair's not black and not that dark, but he absolutely has a rugged appearance with that beard. But I'm just saying that. So Capricorn on the 7th house cusp here shows it's an older person, and that just means, in terms of this, it could be that he is just older than her. So you can look at it in two ways. He's either over 29 or he's considerably older than Maddie. It shows, especially with Saturn here, that this person may have had prior surgeries, broken bones, problems with hips or legs, some sort of walking impediment, knee surgery. That is something to look for when that's on the 7th house cusp. It can show large or thick eyebrows, smaller eyes, sometimes a crooked stature. It's a person that walks with their head stooping forwards. They can often have thick lips. Saturn or Capricorn represents a person that likes to live alone or is a bit of a hermit, could be homeless even. It can even show us that it's a person that knocks one leg against the other as they walk. You know those people that one leg knocks against the other one? That's something to look out for as well. This person can hide his anger, is very willful, envious, malicious, fearful, and proud, which is a strange combination, but always important to remember those words. As I said, it's an older person. It can be a father, stepfather, grandfather, or authority figure, or just a person that's in authority to her or older than her. So I'm not saying it's her father or her stepfather. I don't know if there is a stepfather or anything. I don't think that. I think it's personally I believe it's a person over the age of 29. And with Jupiter here, it's showing me as well that this person is not just slender, but could be two things: tall and overweight, or extremely tall. That's what you see when you have Jupiter and Capricorn together like that, because Jupiter makes everything bigger. So this person is taller or wider than the average Capricorn figure. Okay, now Pluto being in there, that adds some character. The planets in the 7th house shows us some character of the person. So Pluto is representative basically of Scorpio. So I mean, we could have a Scorpion male, but we've got a Scorpionic intense presence. Somebody that doesn't like to be too close to people. Like I said, somebody that likes to be alone. A jealous type of person. I'm thinking that if there's an ex-boyfriend anywhere who's older, I would be personally looking around that area. Somebody that doesn't let go of something easily. Now, this person gives an overall air of power and charisma, but as I said before, and is willful and everything, but is also fearful. It can also indicate that this is actually a well-built person. So I'm feeling that this is somebody that has more weight to them than the slender side. So probably tall and stocky. Now, this person is resistant to a lot of things. In fact, if you walked up to him, you wouldn't want to get too close to him because it would be like he has an invisible barrier around him. This is the person that I can see from this chart. Okay, let's move along. Because Saturn is in Aquarius, this shows me that it could be a person who believes that Maddie has impeded his future in some way. Now that's coming from my book, actually. So it's someone, my book says this, someone who feels the victim has impeded his or her future in some way. So the fact that the ruler of the DC is in Aquarius and not Capricorn can indicate this. So perhaps it's somebody in her past that feels that she has actually been the cause of his problems. Obviously, it's not real problems and it's a delusional thinking, but that could be the case. This person, it also shows me being in Aquarius that this person feels out of place, is distant. So when you talk to this person, they seem full of willful life and all those other things I explained before, but then there can be like that barrier that I explained, and also a distance from this person, like an aloofness, which is an Aquarian trait. But so characteristically and his personality shows externally, this person shows a fierce, willful, determined type of look on the outwardly, and inwardly is actually quite fearful, out of place, distant, not in touch with the world, and holds a grudge. And because the grudges are quite generally Cancer, all of this is opposing Cancer and opposing Maddie. It feels as though there's a grudge. Now, I know that seems really quite specific, but it's hard not to go there when you start to see that 7th house and understand and all the planets and how it works. And then the relationship between the ruler of this, the perpetrator, and her, which is the moon there, it's showing that closeness of how this could be quite accurate. So I cannot dismiss that she knows of this person, but what I see is the person believes that there's wrongdoing when there's just not. And the fact that all of these planets are retrograde, it's like this person feels like, well, this is it, everything's going against me. He's the conjunction recently of Saturn and Pluto has affected him, and then he sat there and thought about it, and that I'm shown that by this aspect here to Mercury, and that being in the 11th house of friends is interesting. He's thought about it, and the grudge has come out somehow. Now, that doesn't mean that she's deceased. I will not say that. People can flip it and then go, well, you're coming with me and we're going to go and live together somewhere. That can happen. And there's a lot of 9th house activity, so I think we're looking at a distance here. What I do see is that the IC, though, and the angles, we have 2. So I'm going to go 2 miles and then 20 miles, and then I would actually be looking at about 200 miles, because lately I've had to go out a lot further. Okay, another thing I see here, the sun is at 27 degrees of Taurus, so that is making a perfect trine, this blue line, to Jupiter at 27 degrees. So the chance of recovery from this person, and I believe it's actually probably this person's home, is good, because I have a feeling that there's a friendly relationship, or that perhaps even she can talk to him and make him understand that he is her friend. So I like to see this Jupiter trining the sun like this in the 11th house of hopes and dreams as well. Now, alcohol could be involved in this. The reason why I say that is Neptune is in the 9th house where the car was, the church area, and also the sun is conjunct Algol. Algol actually interprets to alcohol. So this person could have been an alcoholic, someone who drinks a lot, goes to a lot of bars, and has been known to enjoy a drink. So there's another side of his personality. But it also shows me that the drink wears off and the other person that's not drink fueled comes through. So that gives me hope as well. So here we're on Scribble Maps. I apologise if you hear people behind me. There's somebody having a party again down the road. So this is the beginning of the map, and we're in Greenfield, Ohio. So if I go out here, okay, I've gone out 200 miles, which goes all the way to Kentucky, Indiana, Ann Arbor, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and even into Roanoke, West Virginia. Now that's the furthest line, of course. So we'll go in here, and now the house that she left from was this dot here, and the car was found in the church here, which I will show you now. Here is the Good Shepherd United Church in Greenfield. So this is the area, it's where her car was. Just expand this. So she's come down Route 28, I'm assuming. Do this and go like this, make sure we're going the right way. No, we're not. Turn around. Okay. Okay, yep, so the church is just here, and then the corner market is just here. So just a very tiny little country town market. There's a little stall there, and literally like one shop. Old abandoned looking house. So I'd imagine that the witnesses are perhaps people in the shop or people living here. So if we have a look at this again, and apparently she was seen going, well, or that car was seen going west. So down this vast road where there's just fields and fields and fields. Okay, so anyway, that's Google Maps, and that's where her vehicle was found. So the house and then the car. Right, I've got a weird line here, and I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. So 2 miles out is this far, and now we know obviously that she went this way because her car's there, but this always works very well from the place where a person leaves from. So I've done both here. There's a planetary line that comes from the car, but also the planetary lines that come from the house. Now these 3 lines represent those 3 planets in this 7th house of the perpetrator: Pluto, Jupiter and Saturn. All of those lines are these 3 here. So it gives us this small wedge to look at. So what that implies to me is, well, actually, before I even say that, so we do the same, so we do Saturn, which is the ruler, and 301 degrees, because it's at 1 degree of Aquarius. When we zoom out, it actually goes to the same area as all of these other areas. So 2 miles out, they convene around this route or Highway 22, Sabina, Reeseville, and whatever this is here. These 2 meet. So it's an interesting area. Let's go here. Anderson Fork. I'm not sure what that is. Reeseville goes through there. There's a Rattlesnake Creek, I think, that went through that, but not really overly interested in the creeks at this point in time. So not only does that stellium of planets of the perpetrator go to this area, but even from the vehicle, the ruler of the perpetrator ends up in this area in Reeseville or around just there as well. Now, because the moon was very representative of MADDIE, I wanted to do 0 degrees of Aries, and that is always due north, exactly north. So my thinking is that if she was seen going west on the 28th, then perhaps there's been a turning either here on 62, which has then ended up going through this Washington, Bloomberg, and ending up in around Madison Mills, or gone a bit far, or has gone out west even further past this point here and then gone north. So I would assume, like, if this line comes out here, we would go, you would stay on the 28th, on the Route 28 or whatever that is, and then turn up 73 and end up on 22. So we're looking at west north, but as the crow flies, it's just from there to there. So this 729, whatever road that is interesting to me. So if anyone knows of anybody that MADDIE knew of that lived in that area, please take note of that. As I said, I went out 200 miles, which takes it out really far. Like I said, Kentucky, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Ann Arbor. Now, if I was to say and think that she was that far away, it would be straight up Detroit, Ann Arbor, and that sticks out for some reason for me. So perhaps if anybody knows of anybody that MADDIE knew who came from that area, or did MADDIE know somebody that came from Indiana? That's the general direction of the perpetrator lines, is Indiana there. In fact, it would be, I'll get to the middle, that's the middle line. We'll go 301, 30, 301, 31, around Kokomo, Indiana. And then if we did the other planets, which is 294 there, 294, 13, that's it. Lafayette in Indiana is also another point of interest. That's the perpetrator line. So perhaps if she knew of somebody that came from that area, or Ann Arbor, Detroit, that would be something that I would be interested in, and where I would look as well. Okay, so back to the chart for a minute. Alright, so as I said previously, I have given a good description of this possible perpetrator. To me, when I see Cancer on the ascendant, well, first of all, that shows me that she left from home. Home is Cancer. But also, because it represents the visual side of us, and the moon is representative of her, and in Aries, clothes-wise, it's not sure what she was wearing, but I am going to hazard a guess, and not that this can be taken as gospel, obviously, but I believe that she would have been wearing very comfortable clothes, something that she would have just been worn at home, not dressed up, nothing like that. Probably maybe a tracksuit, depending on the weather, something that she just would have had on at home. That's how I feel she was dressed for this. I don't believe she would have dressed up. It being in Aries, that's sort of the top of the body and the head. It's possible, and I'm not sure, I do not know Maddie, but it is possible that if she wore hats, she may have had a hat on or something on her head. Aries is the very top of us, it's our head. But when we have 0 degrees Aries, it's the very, very top, the top of our head. So that can imply wearing a hat. Now, like I said, I'm not sure of the weather. That could be a beanie, it could be a baseball cap, and it could be nothing because she may not wear hats, but I have to say that. So I believe she was in comfortable clothing. She was just going to get her tan and then go home. I don't think she had any other plans. But it does appear as though she's driven straight to the church. Now, whether that's because she was going to go to church before the market, I'm not 100% sure of her religious leanings. I don't know if she would have gone to church, if that would have been possible. But that church is actually pretty important, not only because her vehicle was there, but I would also be looking at who is in the church, what the church has to do with anything. Otherwise, it implies really that the only other scenario is that a car's broken down and she's stopped to help or something like that, and then that would really show a stranger, and I'm not seeing a stranger. I'm seeing somebody that she knows of. Like I said, not well, but has seen before. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope so much that Maddie is found safe and well. And I will have to say, at the minute I saw her picture, I thought she's going to come home. I truly hope that that's the case. I hope the reason that all of these planets are in the top are because it's not about the person that's taken her, if someone's taken her, but about possibly just making some type of statement to Maddie herself, having 11th house activity there. Perhaps somebody that just wants to, it is somebody that's not thinking right, but that wants her as a friend. I get that type of feeling. Now, if we find out some more information, of course, I will keep having a look, and we'll see what happens. Times do change. We get more information as we go along. So let's keep praying for Maddie, and I hope so much she's found soon. Okay, bye everyone. Take care.